pilot boats shuttling backwards and forwards from Spurn Point to ships in the river. Humber pilots make 27,000 shipboardings a year, and their movements are all controlled from this tower overlooking the Humber estuary.
Yeah, could you tell me exactly what you've got on board in Grimsby now? You've got one man for the Meticosan, is that correct?
Control, sir, and yeah, we never got a word of that. Can you try 11, please?
Yeah, will do. Spurn Pilot Station, good afternoon.
In 1541, Henry VIII watched a ship struggling to enter the harbour in Hull. He ordered it back to sea and decreed that from that day on no ship might enter the port without the services of a qualified pilot.
All easy now, John. Hard starboard.
Hard starboard. Prawo na bord. Jest powinien nazad.
Stop.
Stop, maszyna.
Head slow ahead.
To this day, any ship over 60 metres in length must have a Humber pilot on board before leaving port or entering the river.
Now you go to the Norwegian coast, yes?
No.
No?
We go fishing in open part. Open part, Norwegian Sea.
Norwegian Sea?
Yes.
Yeah. How many days before you arrive?
We have usually short voyage, only 5 months. Usually.
How many days from here to the Norwegian Sea?
Oh, it's very difficult. What is weather?
Well, the weather is good.
Maybe 2 days.
2 days, yeah. And you catch mackerel?
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Maybe.
We catch what may catch.
Okay, yeah. What your owner tells you to catch, yeah?
You tell?
Your owner?
My owner?
Yes.
It's not my own, it's a government ship.
Okay. What the government tell you to catch, yeah?
Yes, it's government catch.
Yeah.
And then our crew go on rest, take rest.
Yeah.
And
so we'd like to proceed up to the Fork anchorage and drop them up there.
And it'll be ready at 16:30.
Yeah, which
Yeah,
port are you
it's
bound
Carring
for,
Guild.
please?
It's difficult to say exactly how the service will continue, but one thing is for certain, it will continue. If we couldn't get down to the end of Spurn Point by road, then we could always drive round to Grimsby on the south side of the river, and the pilot launches would leave here, go to Grimsby, pick us up and bring us out to the ships. That's one option, not necessarily the one that we'll take.
So that if it was breached, you could continue to function. So
Absolutely, no problem.
For 24 hours a day, these boats carry the pilots out to the ships which are anchored, waiting to come into the Humber. Later, they collect the pilots when departing vessels are 5 miles out to sea.
Hello, Lynn, it's Chris at Spurn. Is Dick about? Okay, yeah, we've got a job for him.
Roger, pilot will be waiting near span light window 0245.
No, he will board you at your anchored position at 0245. Do not move from your position. I would like you to be in a position 1 mile north of the Humber light buoy.
If the narrow neck of Spurn Head is breached by the sea, this area towards the point might remain as an island. The animals, birds and sand-loving plants would be unaffected, but the lives of the people who live and work on the point would be badly disrupted. The whole peninsula could even be washed away. To get a better understanding of how coastal erosion will affect Spurn, you have to look further north up the Holderness coast. This is Hornsea. When the railway came bringing the trippers from Hull, the town became a holiday resort. It had to be protected from the sea, and hard defences, walls, a road and a prom were built. They worked well for Hornsea. But hard sea defences cause their own sort of damage. Where the promenade ends, the effect is clear. The beach to the south is starved of sand, the sea eats away the cliff, and fields fall into the sea. Here at Mappleton, a whole community looked set to join the lost villages of the Yorkshire coast. The sea defence work undertaken was the responsibility of Holderness Borough Council.
We had to first of all do the analysis to see whether the property in Mappleton was worth the cost of protecting it, because we were also taking into account the human costs, people's unhappiness and the human tragedies that are involved when people's property gets washed away. And we were convinced that in those terms it was worth doing. But it's a hard-headed business affair, really. It's coast protection. You can't protect if the funds aren't available. That we're very, very pleased with Mappleton. It seems to have done everything that we said. It's the space between the rock groins is full of sand, and it seems to be doing its job. I think that at Mappleton we have got such a substantial amount of granite there that I could conceive that it might be necessary to add to the granite maybe 50 years from now. But I'm hopeful that it would be using that kind of engineering rather than the concrete walls, and concrete, of course, deteriorates much faster than granite.
Is that project likely to do any harm further south?
Well, I don't think it's very easy to say. It's certainly there will have been a short period of time while sand built up at Mappleton, when it to some extent starved other areas of sand. Of course, there are those times, but that's gone now, and I think that any effect were very, very short-lived, if any at all. So
the sand to the south should build up again?
Oh, certainly.
Because it looks fairly depleted now.
Oh, yes, but you can go to areas where a long way away from where we've done the coast protection and found just exactly the same situations. A fast eroding cliff, bare beaches.
The money for Mappleton came mainly from the EC, but coast protection is estimated to cost about £5,000 a metre. The expense cannot be justified to protect isolated farms like this one at Cowden, a mile and a half south of the rescued village.
This building here will be the first building we will have to evacuate. We've mainly got poultry equipment, etc. in there, but it's only 10 to 12 feet off the edge.
So how long will it be before that goes over?
It could go over within the next 6 months, especially if we get a bad winter. We have got a big crack just past the building. That keeps dropping. It's dropped 2 feet in the last couple of weeks. I don't think that'll be there for another 3 weeks anyway. It will go.
So this is the old cliff top path, is it, that we're on now?
Yeah, there used to be about 60 feet out there, but it's all gone now, so we can't graze the cows on there. We used to bring them up and bring them straight into the barn. But now, if we bring them across the bridge, we lost one over the cliff about 6 months ago. She turned up about 10 miles downstream. Luckily, she was all right. She just had a small bruise on her hock, and that was all.
So she'd have been standing on a bit when it actually went?
She must have been, yes. And one of the cows might have given her a bit of a nudge as well. She went over.
So how fast does it go? How much do you lose every year?
Well, the last 8 years we lost about a metre a year, but this year we've tended to lose, at this particular spot, we've lost about 63 feet. We're hoping this rate doesn't stay like this, but if it does, then we shall have to be moving out of our house within the next 2 years.
You've lost 63 feet in a year?
In this last year, yes.
20 yards?
Yes.
And that's definite, provable fact?
Yes, we've got the measurements to prove that now. The beach, we have no beach at the moment, and this is our biggest problem. We have no sand. So, of course, the cliff is eroding at an alarming rate.
How do you mean you've no sand?
Well, if you go down to the beach, the sand is not there. They built a defence at Mapleton, and the sand builds up there. Our sand is no longer here.
So the sea just gets to run against the cliffs?
And it hits it every night now, every day, because we have no protection.
So probably to save your farm, they'd have to build defences like the ones at Mapleton.
That would be the only way now, and even that I think would be possibly too late for us because we're too near the cliff. But it would save the rest of Cowden. But of course, the cost of a scheme like that would be either if they put one groin in, it'd be £1 million. If they put 2 groins in, it would be £2 million.
£1 million to put a groin in?
Put a groin in.
What, the boulder groins?
A boulder groin like they did at Mapleton. That was £2 million. Well, obviously, they're not going to spend £2 million on the farm and the few houses that are in Cowden.
Further south again, ever nearer to Spurn, this old farm at Humpton is already sliding over the cliff. To understand the vulnerability of these farms, you have to look at the land itself.
This material is, in fact, material from the ice cap, which came across the sea about 50,000 years ago. And the ice bore with it a load of debris, muck, which it dropped here on Holderness, forming Holderness. And this is Holderness clay. And when the sea comes in, it does very little in the way of active erosion. Perhaps no more than a few centimetres a year, whereas we know that Holderness is eroding at the rate of nearly 2 metres a year. That the sea only acts as a trigger. It cuts a little notch at the base of the cliff, and that notch then has got a huge area above it, a volume of material, and the weight of that material pressing down on the notch triggers off a big cliff slide. And you can see these big cliff slides as rotational slumps, with the grass on top sliding down. These are affected by lubrication with rainwater. And rainwater is probably a more efficient way of removing material on the Holderness coast than the sea itself. And I'll demonstrate here the constituent parts, which are very important from the point of view of Spurn and for Holderness. Part of the material is this, sand and gravel. That's very important for forming the beaches of Holderness. And part is this material, which, as you can see, is mud, lovely mud. Now, there's a lot of this to very little of the sand and gravel. A lot of mud, not much sand and gravel. The sand and gravel stays here forming the beaches, but the mud is washed out to sea and I suppose moves it back again to Scandinavia, from whence it came.
So it's just rested here for a while?
It's just been here for 50,000 years, a mere nothing.
And is it a good or a bad thing that it should be washed away?
Well, a very bad thing for Holderness, because they live on it. So the more that goes, the more erosion takes place. But a very good thing for European countries such as Denmark, Germany, Netherlands, because quite a lot of this moves across the North Sea and forms the low-lying lands of the Netherlands, which of course, valuable agricultural land, and indeed cities are built on this, on the other side of the North Sea. At the moment, they need it desperately. We have a rising sea level, and it's essential that this material moves across to the other side of the North Sea so that they can keep pace with the rising sea levels. You could think about this beach as being a river of sand moving south from the erosion of Holderness and going down towards Spurn. The old idea was that that was what fed Spurn, that the sand on Spurn came directly from here. But that's not quite true. If you just look at this, you'll see that here's Holderness and here's Spurn at the base, and the river of sand is moving down, but just before it gets to Spurn, it moves offshore. And only a tiny trickle actually gets through to Spurn itself. So it is true that Spurn does need sand from Holderness, but not the whole amount. There's an enormous amount of sand which goes off into the North Sea.
John Pethick is a leading authority on coastal erosion. He believes that the end of Spurn is relatively safe as long as it continues to be fed by its river of sand. But even if the point survives, everyone is agreed there will soon be some sort of breach.
We've been told, certainly as long as I've worked for this council, that's 18 years, that the sea was going to break through at any moment, and it never has done. The last time it broke through was in 1850, I believe, and since then a lot of hard engineering works were done to make sure it didn't happen again. But of course in those days it was being done by the War Department for reasons of national security. Once again, the national interest had come to the aid, if you like, of a local interest there.
And that's no longer the case.
That's been removed. It is no longer necessary to have a battery at the end of Spurn. So we're faced with 3 miles or so of sand and a dozen families living at the end of Spurn against a huge cost of a hard engineering scheme to protect it. And I think we've got to look at other ways of trying to make the future tolerable for the people that live down there. And there may be other ways rather than just throwing concrete and money at the sea to help these people.
Today, the relatively stable headland is facing a new threat from another sea defence project further to the north.
You need strength and beauty. Must be harnessed to give you control. You want to be safer. And have security. You need comfort. To be in harmony with your surroundings. The Mondeo has it all. Beauty with inner strength. Mondeo from Ford.
Chew Endicay after meals and snacks. New Spearmint Endicay with its special active ingredient helps keep the acid away that can start tooth decay.
It's the world's greatest DIY trade-in at Do It All. Bring in your old mower and get £10 off any new one. Bring in any old power tool and we'll give you £5 off any new one. We'll give you £2 off for any old hand tool. And a full £5 off for any old light fitting. There's £1 off for any roll of wallpaper. And you can exchange any old paintbrush for £1 off paint or wood care. Do it all. Better products, better prices.
Good morning, gentlemen. Kenko is famous for ground coffee, but times change. And I want us to be equally respected for Kenko Instant. It's made from the same quality beans.
Is this wise, ma'am?
Have you tried it?
I don't have to. We could never produce instant coffee to this standard.
Oh, but we can, Jenkins. You're drinking it.
Kenko, everything we know about coffee in an instant.
How easy is it to join a Norwich Union healthcare scheme? There, that didn't hurt, did it? Call healthcare free on 0800 42 42 42. Norwich Union. We'll keep you in the best of healthcare.
Easington is the site of an enormous gas terminal owned by British Gas and BP. It's worth hundreds of millions of pounds. Unless it's defended from the tides, it will slide very soon into the North Sea. The Easington terminal is situated just 2 miles north of the highly fragile neck of Spurn Head.
It was built, in fact, in 1968, and it was built about 50 metres from the sea edge, when they thought they had about 25 years of gas. And since then, they found a lot more gas, and therefore they wanted to stay here much longer than they anticipated 25 years. So you can see, very soon, this terminal is going to fall into the sea. So they are trying to face this problem at the moment by thinking about coastal defence. They're trying to protect the toe of the cliff here with some kind, we don't know what yet, but some kind of defence works. And as we've seen earlier, of course, this will interfere with the river of sand, bringing sand down this beach to Spurn.
So if they built a sea wall, that would stop that sand moving?
It would interfere with the river of sand, certainly.
And what would that do to Spurn?
Well, of course, Spurn depends upon a very small percentage of this sand moving through to feed it, so that it can erode and deposit at the same time.
So would Spurn break up?
Yes, Spurn would eventually break up and die.
So if they make a mistake here, they could do significant damage to Spurn.
They could, and I think they realise that at the moment, and they're being very careful indeed in their plan